There have been many innovations in this organization, and one of the innovations that came about a year ago was when John Nugent asked me to start an organization within Serena called the Value Engineering Team. Value engineering has a Wikipedia definition, so it must be something real, and you heard him talk about this in his main stage presentation. The process of value engineering has been around for a little while in our industry, and it takes a different approach to how we get projects done. And what I want to do then is to talk to you about how we do value engineering at Serena and why we do it and how it's there to help you. I think all of us have seen projects that have been proposed by the end users that are really going to change the face of our company, but they never get implemented because the business case for them can never be proven, or maybe there is a business case, but it's just not presented well enough to convince the senior executives in the organization. And all too often, really terrible ideas get implemented because they have that slick presentation, because they have some thrown together numbers that prove that this will be of value to the organization. And let's not forget there are those projects that are marked FOB in the priority list. You know, you have priority 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then FOB. And these are projects which are from friends of the boss. And so those get done too. So what I want to do then is to talk to you about the process that we go through at Serena in order to help you get the projects that need to be done in your organization to get them funded. It's a three-phase process, and it starts with this thing we call value discovery. Most organizations, it turns out, are very good at what they do. If you think about it, the reason why you've reached that place in your organization where you are at the top of your organization is because you are very good at what you do. Your boss has empowered you to optimize your business, and you've done that. And over the last decade, you have been investing in your people, getting them the right technology, getting them the right training. You've hired the best and in-class individuals that you can find, and you're doing a darn fine job of running your business. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't be here. In the last decade, we've been through many belt-tightening moments in our economy, and those people who weren't cutting it got cut. And so you really are the cream of your organization. And you've optimized your business, and you've got it working effectively. But I can tell you, having done more than 50 of these value engineering engagements, myself and my team, that we have learned that there is still inefficiency in those organizations. There still continues to be massive amounts of rework going on in the organization. You know, one of the problems I think that we have as an industry is an inability to say no. One of the things that we do constantly is anything we can to help our buddies. And the problem is now that it's quite acceptable for work to be delivered to us from our upstream peer, work that is incomplete or inaccurate. And we say, well, you know, they're busy, let me complete this work and fix it up. And then for us to be now under pressure to make our deadlines, and then we end up pushing that problem downhill. So there's a lot of rework going on. There's also a lot of duplication going on. One of the most amazing things that I see almost every day when I'm out doing value engineering studies is somebody receives a document or they receive a script, and they then end up rekeying that script because their environment's different and they want to transpose it from the form it came into the form they need it in. I talked to a client recently who told me, and you may think this is low because I've heard of worse cases, but a client told me that 35% of the tickets that are put into their organization end up being rekeyed because they're not put into the right ticketing system. So that's a third of all the tickets that get created end up being rekeyed. That's a massive amount of duplicated effort that should be eliminated. And we spend altogether too much time waiting for stuff because when we expect it on a particular date, people are late, and of course that reduces our productivity. So there's this big gap then between our capacity and our productivity. So I love the dramatic sound effects from the weather here. This is just great. Oh, and by the way, all those people who thought they would skip the afternoon session and go out to the pool and the beach, are they sorry now? So where do you think all of this extra value lies in your organization? It's not that it lies within you, but it absolutely lies within the boundary layers. When I go out and interview organizations, and as I say, we've done over 50 of these now, around the world, the same story happens time and time again. I was recently in Singapore with an organization. I interviewed everybody throughout the complete life cycle, from the people on demand management at one end of the life cycle to the people in service management at the other end of the life cycle. And they all said the same thing. I'm doing fine. The stuff I get from him is terrible, and this guy downstream has no idea what he's doing. He's always asking questions about the stuff I give him. I could do his job. And that was the same. For 12 separate organizations, that was the same story. And there is a massive amount of value in your organization in that boundary layer. Now, here's the thing. As humans, we're not very good at saying no because we're passionate and compassionate people. But when we automate between those boundaries, computers, frankly, no matter how many chocolates and flowers you buy them, they still say no. It's a simple problem. I remember Doug Troxell saying to me when I first joined Serena, he said, Kevin, what do you mean your job's hard? All you have to worry about is 1 and 0. Well, he was right. You know, the computer system, if we automate the handovers, the computer system says, do you have the requirements document? Do you have the test specification? Do you have the deployment rules? Check, check, check. Okay, I permit the transfer of this to the next person in the life cycle. If you don't check any of those boxes, guess what? It doesn't transmit it. And it's very hard to encourage a system to make those changes. So what we've been finding as we've been going around the world doing these value engineering studies is that in the boundary layer, between organizations, between whole silos, but also within a silo within departments, there is a massive amount of value that's locked up in the organization that's not being released. And we want to help you identify that, document it, and show that by taking your business idea for a new technology or for an improvement to an existing technology, that you can release that value and get more capacity back because you're not doing that rework, that duplication, and spending all that waiting time. So let me tell you about some numbers that we're discovering. By the way, I want to tell you about my retirement plan. So when we've done a couple of years of these value engineering studies, I am going to devote my life to flying around the world and doing keynote presentations on behalf of Serena at every conference in the world. Because I can tell you now, we already know things about your organization that you don't know, and we know them without interviewing you about them. Because we're starting to see that there are industry trends in the organization that are universally true. When I go and do value engineering studies, I will often say to organizations, how would you calculate, how would you estimate the amount of rework that goes on in your organization? And at first glance, most people don't have any sense of that. They can't really extract out of their day how much time they spend fixing stuff. But after we've interviewed them for a little while, and we start to poke around at the things that they do and start to score the different parts of their job, what we're discovering is that generally speaking, and the numbers we're getting are somewhere between 15 and 25%, but on average, most of the organizations we've interviewed, that's 54 of them now, most of those organizations are reporting that their rework is of the order of 20%. Think about that. 1 day a week of each individual in your organization is spent doing something to fix something that shouldn't have been broken. And if it was broken, it shouldn't have been handed over. Now, you can think about this in your own terms. Think about your organization, and you can say, well, 20% is high for me or 20% is low for me. If it's low for you, come talk to me when I stop speaking. Because this is the kind of thing that we're finding. We're also finding that the number of emergency fixers has been rising exponentially now, and about half of the organizations we've talked to are telling us that 60% of the changes that go through their organization are marked as emergency fixes. They're not emergency fixes, though. What they are the business saying, I gotta have this. I just, whatever you can do, anything, please. Here are some chocolates and flowers. Please, put this through for me. And we do, and we mark it as an emergency change, and we fast track it past the 9-month release cycles, and we get it in production this afternoon. And that rise of emergency changes should tell you something about your business, should tell you something about how you run release management. So the other thing that we're learning and giving back to you as customers is that there is this shift going in your organization. There's a shift in the way in which the business wants you to behave, and you're optimizing the system in order to meet their real needs. And you perhaps need to take a rethink about how you do release management. Maybe you need to rethink and say, maybe the emergencies should be the norm, and it's the 9-month releases that are the exception. Again, about half of the organizations we've talked to have reported that from the moment the project is committed to the moment the project is deployed, on average, about 40% of the content is dropped. And this tells us something about our estimating. It tells us something about our project planning. It tells us something about our execution. It tells us something about how we commit to the business. The business demands that we do everything we can, but we realize as we go through the life cycle, this has got to go. We can't really test that. That's too hard. And we end up with only 60% of what we promised to deliver. And again, your organization is going to be some different. What I'm telling you is that already now, from those about 50 projects that we've undertaken, we're starting to see a sense of what it's like to be in IT in the 21st century. And I want to take this data on the road, and I want to tell the world about what the world really looks like on behalf of Serena, because I want Serena to become recognized for knowing this and helping people get through that. Okay. So if you do want Serena to come and build a business case so you can get your project done and you can release some of that value and address some of those numbers, then what's the process? Well, it starts out with interviews. We come for a couple of days and interview key people in your organization, people who own these problems, and then we go away and we spend a couple of days doing research. We research you, we research what your executives have said, excuse me. We research what your competitors are doing. We try and get a really full understanding of where your business is compared to other businesses of your kind. We look at industry analyst reports. We try and get a sense of where you are on the continuum of maturity for a business like you. And we sit down and we do some detailed analysis on what you told us to try and work out what are the kind of things that would help you get your project approved. I was recently in Italy with a large insurance company, and their release cycle took 110 days. And when we talked to them about why they did these things, we were able to show them that modern release management techniques could shorten their release cycle to 40 days. And they were thrilled and excited. But we said, you asked us to come talk to you about what you should do for release management, but really that's not the value here. The value is that you should take those extra 70 days that you've gained and you should put those into the QA cycle, because that's where the real problem is. And so one of the things that we're able to do now is to step back for you and give you this broad vision of where you are in your development life cycle and your service management life cycle so that you can implement some best practices. And again, that's going to help the overall case when you're trying to sell your solution. When we've done all of this, we then come and visit you as part of what we call the value realization phase. You saw from John, this is the kind of report that we produce for you. And if you go to Stephen Kretschmann's value engineering session, you will find that he has copies of this report that you can have. This is actually a real report for a real customer. We've changed the name to Clarius, and we've changed some of the details so you can't see who they are. But you can see that this particular customer has a pretty serious set of problems, and we enumerate those and describe where the value is and what it would take to fix that. So go to Stephen Kretschmann's session and get a copy of that report. We give you this detailed report, and we give you it in Word format. We do a very brief presentation, just 10 slides, and it's in PowerPoint format. And then we give you a financial model with all the assumptions that we've made so you can manipulate it so you can put in the real numbers. That means you can lie to us and tell us that you only have 100 people when you've got 200, and you can make the numbers change as you want. For us, it's all about giving you the tools to be successful. And we have one customer who took all of these reports, they deleted all the words Serena, replaced it with his own name, and successfully got his project implemented, and we were happy about that. Our job is to help you be successful with your projects. So the first thing that we do then, when we arrive, is we give you a value plan, a blueprint that you can follow that will help you release that pent-up value in your organization, get your capacity back, and get more efficiency out of the software that you already have or the software you may acquire. And then what we do is we build a glide slope. We try and calculate, if you follow this plan, where the value will be starting to be released as people deploy the solutions, as they start to implement and start to get the training. And we give you two alternative views of the world. We give you a very conservative view of the world, and we give you what we think is a realistic view of the world. And we're very proud of these numbers. We spend a lot of time with you iterating these numbers, and at the end of the day, these numbers are as much your numbers as our numbers. Because what we want is for you to be able to go to your executives and say, hey, this is where we're going to pay back. It might take 9 months, it might take 18 months, but at least we're going to know that things are going to get better soon. We're on a trajectory that gets us there. And this is very important to us because we're going to hold ourselves accountable to this glide slope. Once you start to implement the blueprint and you start to execute, we don't leave you alone. We constantly monitor how the project is going to make sure that the value is delivered. And what we do then is, as you put the implementation team in, we talk to the implementation team and say, give us some baseline data. Tell us exactly what the numbers are now that we're starting to get telemetry from people. I have a very dear friend who is a rocket scientist who built part of the Mars rover, and she's all about telemetry. She cares very much about the information that takes 14 minutes to get from Mars. You know, we've never really talked about this before, but we need to get telemetry from people, and that's what process automation is about. If we get telemetry from their activities, we can see when they're overloaded, we can see when there's a holdup, we can see when there's a bottleneck. And so we then start to instrument the processes, particularly the processes in those boundary layers between silos and departments, and get telemetry coming back. And that telemetry allows us to build a glide slope so that we can track the progress of the actuals against the best case and the likely case that we think are going to occur. And if things go off the glide slope, about every 3 months, we caucus together with the team and we say, hey, why is it off the glide slope? Are we doing better than expected because? Are we doing worse than expected because? And we help tweak so that we continue on the glide slope. So at the end of a year or 18 months or whatever the projected horizon was, we can show you that the value that we thought was going to be released was the value that was actually released. And then at the end of the 12 months or 18 months or whatever it may be, we do a review. And in that review, we do a quick rediscovery. We talk to the individuals concerned to see what they're experiencing and what their new numbers are. And then we re-report to your executives. So we can say, hey, look, this project was a success, or this project was 70% successful, or whatever it may be. And then talk about what is the next set of blueprints that will take us forward to get the remaining 30% or another 30%, depending on where we find ourselves. So this is a very engaged process, and there's something really remarkable about it. It's completely free. Serena wants to help you be successful. We want to empower you and give you the tools and the skills for writing business cases to get your projects done, because we know that it's you on the front line every day with your business that understands what really it's going to take to improve the velocity of your releases, to improve the quality of the requirements, to improve the services that you deliver through your organization's help desk and service desk and an operational area. And so we want to make that available to you. And if you want to participate in a value engineering study, you can contact me directly. You can contact your local sales representative, and we'll make that happen for you. This is a really great service from Serena. I'm very excited to be part of it. I hope you sign up for one of these. Thank you.